Well, my name is Sheila Saidman. I have lived in Luzerne County for a very long time. I decided to, after my career as an educator, then as an attorney, I decided that about 4 years ago that I wanted to run for county council. That was mostly because I had been reading in the paper and things seemed a little dysfunctional. So I talked to Dave Pedri at one of the Bar Association programs and asked him what I should do. He said, definitely run. And I said, well, I need to go to some meetings first. If you haven't been in a meeting for county council, how can you run for it? And he said, really, Sheila, don't go to the meetings. You may not run. So I decided to go and continued going for several months and decided I definitely did want to run. And now on county council, I have had a real awakening perspective on what goes on in the county, what things county council is responsible for and what they are not responsible for. And as I said, the first term, well, about until the second primary election for the next group of people that came in, when I went on council, I really didn't know who was a Republican or Democrat. If they ran with me, but for the longest time I didn't know if Jean Kelleher was a Democrat or a Republican. And that's because we really, I think, had such a nonpartisan attitude. Things were for the good of Luzerne County, nothing else. You may have a difference in opinion, but it was always on behalf of the county. I've seen a change in the last 2 years, I guess, where it has become much more partisan. And that's somewhat disturbing because county politics are much different than state or national politics. Local politics is totally different. We don't have the same issues. And that's why I decided to run again, because I really feel that my voice is mature, has a perspective that some of the people don't bring, and I really want the county to do well.
One of the big decisions to be made if you're reelected is talk about knowing Dave Pedri when he's left, choosing a new county manager. What would you be looking for in a new county manager? Do you think, obviously Dave is an attorney like yourself. Is that, you looking for another attorney or
no,
looking
I
in
don't,
another direction?
I don't think whether you're an attorney or whether you are a business major, I think it's the experience that we're looking for. Does this person have financial experience? Do they understand budgets? We have a $330 million budget. That's somewhat overwhelming. So it can't be somebody that I think, has had their experience in a mom and pop business. They have to have an experience in a larger company. They have to know how to manage. They have to know how to direct their employees. And there are hundreds, or over 1,000 employees. It's not just being the manager of a small group. Plus you have all your division heads. I think the person has to have a great deal of integrity, a great deal of honesty, the personality that he can work with council. And lately, I believe that is not very easy.
Let's kind of return to that, because you mentioned it in your opening statement. Can you give us some, details, examples of maybe things that have happened on the council that makes you feel that it's perhaps headed in the wrong direction?
Yes. One of the things, there are two things, that come to my mind immediately. The first thing is when one of our county council members brought an amendment, it was called the Second Amendment for Statuary Sovereignty, basically, of Pennsylvania. And the issue was, he brought it because he's concerned at some point the governor and the state governor, or even maybe local ordinances, might put some safeguards on the use of guns. For instance, no assault rifle, no magazines, large magazines, basic, not against, we are not, or I personally am not against the use of guns. I think many people, enjoy the sport. But this was an outright piece of legislation that said if the county, if the state, if somebody comes in and tries to put these things in place, we are there to defend the Second Amendment. Now, we have the Bill of Rights. We have a Constitution. The right to bear arms is in the Constitution. There have been decisions on it. And so that is a given. There's no reason to do anything more. You don't need a First Amendment sanctuary county. You don't need a Bill of Rights entire sanctuary county. This was, to me, silly. So I did some research on it, found out that it was created by sheriffs in the western part of the United States who felt really threatened by some of their state governments for laws making some restrictions on their guns. And since immigrants had sanctuary safety, they said, why couldn't they have sanctuary safety? So to me, it became a very partisan issue. It really did. And I argued against it and was very disappointed that the county took the position. So we are a Second Amendment statutory county, which to me means nothing. And when I saw the first resolution, it talked about God being the creator of all things, and it just seemed over the top. They did change that language, which I felt that was appropriate. But to me, the entire piece of legislation was inappropriate. The next piece of legislation that I'm very concerned about now is the American Rescue Plan funds. And I've made this very well known to council and the public. The ARP funds are to be used, and I've done a lot of reading of the statute. I also have researched what the other counties are doing with that money, if they're doing anything yet, because we still really are waiting for the final regulations. Personally, I don't believe the final regulations are going to look any different really than the current ones. But the issue is whether this amount of money, $114 million, will probably be the largest influx of cash, of money to this county. And what is supposed to be done with it is supposed to be long-range strategic planning for the good of the community. There are lots of things that we need in this county. We need better infrastructure. The public is always talking about our roads and our bridges. We have a lot of roads and we have a lot of bridges here. There's a definite need to talk about flood protection. We know that ultimately is going to come. They talk about a 100-year flood possibility, but that is ultimately going to come. We have had a couple scares since Agnes. So we need to do something about flood protection. These are the kinds of things that were recommended, working with nonprofits, giving them some help along the way, working with the emergency workers, the workers that never got paid for their work during COVID. They didn't get paid, a lot of them, their overtime and how much they needed. We need to put money into those hazard pay for the emergency workers. There are so many things. What the county, certain county members are leaning towards is to take a rebate, to give our public a cash rebate of $299 this year or next year, and then $299 the following year. As he said, to help the little man. And because we don't have the Homestead Act anymore, we had to get rid of it. It was illegal for us to have it. So when we got rid of the Homestead Act, he said, what this should act as is a rebate if you did have the Homestead Act. This is what you would receive. Now, one of the strong prohibitions for the American Rescue Plan is the fact that money cannot be used to pay down your pension fund or to solidify your pension fund according to the regulations, nor is it to reduce taxes. Well, this rebate is not really a tax reduction. So they feel that's a strong argument. They feel that it could help people. But people that have the ability to get the Homestead Act to qualify for it aren't necessarily the people that need this money. They aren't necessarily the homeless people. They aren't the homeless people. There are just many programs that the federal government and the state government has provided for people. They increase Social Security. They are giving rental assistance. We are giving much rental assistance. But small businesses that were destroyed or closely destroyed need help. So I don't know how that's going to come out. I know I have talked to many members of CCAP, which is the County Commissioners Association for Pennsylvania, and they also include county council. There are a couple counties that have county councils and not commissioners. And when I ask them about it, they say, you can't do that. And when I explain to them the rationale, they aren't sure what the answer is to that, as whether it's a yes or no, but they are sure that that is not the purpose of the funds. It's for strategic, focused, long-term planning. We'll never get those funds again, and we need to make good use of them. I don't see $299 over 2 years, once each year, is going to provide much relief at all for individuals, for families. I would rather see it in a food bank. I'd rather see it in rental assistance. So, right now, because the final regs haven't come out, and I believe our acting county manager also, I believe she understands, I believe several people on council understand what my concerns are, but we have a couple other loud voices there. We have been able to hold this decision off. First of all, I think there's only one county I've seen in Pennsylvania that has already used the funds, and that's Northampton. They've used part of their funds. And they have used it for the things I have just said. That's what they used it for, part of it. The $299 that would go to each family would take up 46% of the $112 million. That's a big chunk of change that can be used more prudently and better for our county in the long run than a quick shot in the arm. And that's exactly what it is.
Let's move on to a couple other questions we've kind of been asking all the candidates, especially people on the council. This lawsuit involves the election board. How did you vote on that, and how do you feel about kind of one part of the county suing another?
This is an issue that I've gone back and forth about. And why I voted, I believe, for the lawsuit, the fact that I wanted it over and done and the decision made, since what we were going to do, what Mike Gutierrez said there should be no election. And Joe Cosgrove said there should be a special election. I know both lawyers personally. I think they're both very bright individuals. I read the one opinion and I said, oh, that's right. And then I read the other opinion and I said, well, that's right too. So I don't know what to do. And there were several people on council that felt they needed an answer one way or another, because perhaps this will come up again. And at that time, I don't believe that the idea that Sam Sanguidolci was going to be running with no opposition was decided yet. The Democratic Party was still looking for a candidate. So I think they felt that Sam should be involved in a special election. Now, the issue, when we saw that there was nobody running against Sam, I felt like, well, the judge has come down with what he has said. There should be a special election. To me, the Sam is an excellent candidate for the job. The Democratic Party had no one else. And now the issue becomes, does he serve 2 years or does he serve 4 years? Because the statutory language is somewhat confusing. And that is why they chose to sue, or the county chose to sue, The idea of one part of the county suing another division is very upsetting to me, because that was one of the reasons Home Rule Charter was created, was that there were too many lawsuits interconnected in the county. Statuary suing this person, the court administrator suing that person. There were just too many issues. Now, I did not like it, but I saw I agreed they needed to get an answer. And at this point, I think that there's a hearing today with the judge in federal court. But it's an expense that really we not necessarily can afford, and maybe it should have just been let go. The election board, and Linda Hout really felt strongly about this, that we had no standing. The election board makes that decision, and that's it. I told Linda personally, I believe you do have standing, that the judge would find that we had standing, and I was right in that respect. But I'm not sure that Linda's position of this is the election board's purview and county council should not be involved in it.
That raises an interesting question. Maybe this isn't entirely on point, but there are things in the county charter that perhaps are vague or not well defined. And now that you've been on the council for a while, are there things in the charter that you think could be adjusted, and so what?
Oh, yes. I sit on the authority boards and committee. There are rules in the charter that a person applying for one of those positions could not have been on an authority board or commission for 4 years prior to that. There's issues of people that are coming in, and I cannot tell you how many people in Luzerne County come in for these purely voluntary positions, and you're overwhelmed by how incredible their resumes are, and that they're willing to do this, and they're willing to volunteer. They don't get paid. So, I think if a person's coming in that situation, the fact that they were a poll worker the year before and got paid $200 should not keep them from being on the authority boards and commission. Currently, right now, I just found out, when we found out that Vito was not going to be the county solicitor anymore, the acting county solicitor, and I called Ramilda to find out why, and I found out that the charter requires you can only have an acting county solicitor for 90 days. Well, if your acting county manager looks like it's going to be there a lot longer than 90 days until the search committee completes their work. So total lack of consistency when you are changing these solicitors. So right now, we have a new solicitor for council. Vito is no longer oversees council. Attorney Craig does. And when her 90 days are up, we'll need another one. And I'm sure we're going to hit that 90-day mark. So there are things over and over that sometimes the language is vague. Sometimes there are people on council that believe it's in direct conflict with state law. So I think there has to be some real close reading of the charter and input from council members, and those things have to go on the ballot to change it. A lot of people think there should be less people on council, that the number, that 11 is too large of a number. Personally, it doesn't matter to me. Some people think 7 would be better, or 9. I think 11's a good number. Maybe I've heard other people talk about the fact that the people on council should not be clustered in one area. There shouldn't be 3 people from the mountaintop area, 2 people from Kingston, 2 people from Dallas. They shouldn't be that way. They should be picked by their legislative districts or their county, their township, their municipality. So I think that's something to probably think about. The number doesn't bother me, but maybe the piling up of one area against another is difficult.
Okay, I'm going to vote on November the 2nd. And I haven't made up my mind about my last 1 or 2 picks from county council, and your name is one of the ones that I'm thinking about as I'm standing there. What would be the one or at most 2 things that you would point to from your first term on council that would convince a voter to vote for you instead of someone else?
Well, the first thing, as an incumbent, you have the experience of what does county council do, what is it able to do, you know what their responsibilities are. I don't think, depending on the individual you're talking to, I think that you just can't say, well, check my record. Because a lot of times the public will disagree with you. Many of the people in the public disagree with me on the American Rescue Plans, but I do know I'm right. And many people have written to, I get a letter almost every day that says no mandates from the county on mass vaccination. I'm your boss, you need to do what I say. And we are watching you. I get a letter like that. A couple weeks ago, I was getting one every day. Now, the new one I'm getting is about the Patriot Act. Don't let Biden use the Patriot Act to make decisions about school children wearing masks or not. It's just, I don't know, some group may be pushing these people. But I would say my experience and my maturity. There's something to be said for age.
You mentioned the vaccine mandates. Do you think the county should impose a vaccine mandate?
I believe in mandates. When I was at the CCAP convention, I went to the lawyers for CCAP that also believed that that you can mandate it, that it's legal to mandate it. There are Supreme Court cases that go back to the smallpox vaccine. I remember polio vaccine and standing in line to get your shot. That's why we don't have these illnesses anymore. I come from a medical family, so I really feel very strongly that masks are very important, and should be mandated. And the other thing is that vaccinations should be mandated. And I know there are many people that disagree with me, but I believe it's the safest and right now the only way to handle this COVID plague.
Why do you think the county manager has not imposed a vaccine mandate?
I think she has the mask mandate, and from what she tells me, it's being followed very well. They have not had a lot of cases in the county. Actually, even in our prison, we have only had 9 cases. That's really low for prison populations. And I think when she put in the vaccination, the mask mandate, I think she was hoping that that would alleviate her from having to put a vaccination mandate. Now, for a while there, with the 150 cases a day or the new 140 cases, what your paper is reporting, it became a little frightening, and I thought maybe she would have to do it. And when that issue came up in council, one of our members, because she saw how divisive that issue was on council, she said, look, the acting county manager is not doing it. She's not planning on it. You just heard her. So it's not necessary to do this vote right now. It's too divisive for our council. Let's postpone it. So it was voted on, and everybody but 2 people voted for the postponement, and the one person that didn't postpone it said that a vote to postpone was a vote for tyranny. That to me is just ridiculous.
Can you address, please, the ongoing issues of children and youth? How that escaped a lot of people's attention, including perhaps the county manager and the county council?
I think the situation is appalling. When they put Joanne's son, and I wasn't there when she was put into Children and Youth Services as the manager, she was there to clean up a mess regarding provisional certifications. And from what I understood, she cleaned that up. I think some of this was related to the state because their system should have picked this up much earlier, I think. When you start seeing those kind of numbers come through on the computer on their, and it escapes me now the name of the computer program for children and youth at the state level, child something. They should have seen these numbers were out of whack with other counties. And they didn't. So I think when she started getting pressure, and she got a lot of pressure, I understand, for her backlog, and she chose an illegal way to do it, and totally illegal. And I think there are going to be more people that are going to be arrested. And and I don't put it on David Pedri, because I think the state, I don't think Josh Shapiro's office got involved with it until after David was gone, or he did not know that they were investigating it. And I don't think council would have really known at all. And I know it goes back to well, you should have known Kids for Cash was going on. Yes, there are people that should have known Kids for Cash. There are attorneys I know that should have known Kids for Cash was going on. But did it all fall at Jackie Carroll's feet? I don't think so. I think it fell at a lot of people's feet.
Do you think it was just coincidence that charges against Van Song were announced on Pedri's last day as county manager?
I think it was probably a coincidence. I don't think it was planned. I really don't. There were people that just on council that said, you make a mistake, it ends up with you. This is such a black eye for us. he should be held responsible in his payments. His extra payments should be held back. We shouldn't allow him to resign. We should terminate him immediately. I don't think that was planned, and I don't think David was aware of it.
Do you think it was appropriate for council to hold an emergency executive session the night before, considering how council has no oversight directly over children and youth?
Well, I think they held the executive session, and I have never had so many executive sessions than this new term, so to speak. The first 2 years I was in, I don't even know if we had an executive session. It wasn't really necessary. Now we have executive sessions all the time because I think people that, we don't have any direct involvement with it. The state really pays almost all the reimbursement for children and youth. But there are people on council that want to know everything. And I think as a matter of caution and trying to make some people happy, she's doing everything she can. She's bending over. Sometimes I don't think that would have happened before.
Do you have any thoughts on who would make a good chairperson next year?
I really think Kendra Radel could do the job. She's a Republican, but she's smart, she's committed, she makes good decisions, and she's young. She also has that job in Exeter, which, gives her some kind of leadership skills, I think. Kendra, to me, has been one person I thought about. I know if Chris wins, Chris doesn't want the position. He's been vice chair, but he would not take the position. And there are some people that I definitely don't want to have the position or even be considered.
Can you name them?
I would rather not.
Do you know anything about the rather abrupt and mysterious resignation of David Parsnick?
I think I got this call from Eric Mark a couple of weeks ago. We had an executive session on that, and there were statements made by our acting county manager that go to personnel issues that cannot be made public. I think I told Eric this. I think there were many times that David did not follow through on things, that David was not the right person for that position. It's a big position. And there were other things that I think the finger could have been pointed at him, but they weren't. I think Mr. Petrie, I think David really liked Dave Parsnick, and maybe under another manager, David would have been removed from his position earlier. But I know the reasons, and Remilda just couldn't happen.
When you say he was removed from his position, we were under the impression he resigned.
He did resign. But I think you know this, you may be given the option by your manager to resign, or you'll be terminated.
He didn't give 2 weeks severance, though.
He did not. I haven't seen his numbers yet. I know Walter Griffith has been asking for them, but I know that I don't believe he did get his 2 week severance. I don't know if he resigned and there wasn't a disciplinary action and he was entitled to that. I guess he could bring an action against the county but maybe when all the facts are on the table, he would prefer not revealing some of those issues.